Hey everybody, today I'm just going to be playing some Sonic Generations, and this is when I was going for the 100% completion, and I was just going back through the different bosses in the game on hard mode. I wanted to just kind of talk about open world games and why they've really just gotten kind of boring, and why they've gotten boring. Open world gaming has been around for a long time, going all the way back to the first Legend of Zelda in 1986. I think there was some other game that had released before then, but that's the biggest example I can think of. So this concept where you're free to roam around and interact with the world and, choose how you want to explore it, it's not anything particularly new, but it had taken some more time for those kind of games to become more popular, and I think that that's due to the technical limitations that there were at the time. I'm just going to be getting into this today and talking about, the first open world game I had ever played was really kind of a groundbreaking experience from Bethesda. And no, it was not Skyrim, it was Oblivion. I didn't really know what to expect when I first started playing, but I had watched my dad play it all the time, and I had taken an interest in it. And I was really kind of shocked at how immersive the game was, and I spent so many hours just exploring all the nooks and crannies in the map. I don't really remember a whole lot about my first playthrough of Oblivion or, all of that, but I really do remember that feeling that I had playing it. Being able to traverse the world and just explore all of these different caves, dungeons, stuff like that, and, choosing where you want to go, like that concept was always so cool to me. It's not a feeling that you can really replicate with a linear experience, having an entire world opened up before you and just being able to, go crazy. And so this opened the door for me to the genre, and from there I ran wild. When Skyrim released, I doubled the playtime of Oblivion easily, and that was only one playthrough that I had on there. So while Oblivion was my first open world game, Skyrim is really where I saw just how far the genre could be taken. It was really just a huge moment in gaming history when that released. And honestly, I think there is a good reason why we're able to play it on every single console available and even like a frickin' toaster or something. It really explored the idea of, hey, you see that mountain? Go climb it and see what you can find. Of course, there was always about 500 other things that would distract you, and you would just, kind of get lost doing everything else, and by the time you got all that done, you completely forgot what you were even trying to do in the first place. Skyrim was revolutionary, and it'll always hold a special place in my heart for all the hours I spent just roaming around the snowy countryside and all the caves and points of interest across that ginormous map. The following year, Ubisoft decided to wedge itself right in between me and Skyrim, though, with what I believe is still to this day one of the best games they've released and a top favorite game of all time for me. Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 did something that Oblivion and Skyrim weren't able to do for me. Care about the main story. Don't get me wrong, the main stories in those games were serviceable, but I completely forgot what I was even supposed to be doing by the time I got to the first town in Skyrim. I mean, that kind of just feeds into the whole, there's 500 other things that I could do, and, you get to the first town, and then it just kind of spirals from there. You just get caught up doing this, that, the other, and I don't know, I never really got too into the main story of Skyrim, though. Far Cry 3 opened the game being captured, watching the main character's brother die, and running through the jungle with gunfire behind you. I was immediately hooked. It had a huge map at the time, and it was filled with beautiful graphics, decent AI, and some really kick-ass gameplay. It was known by a lot of people as Skyrim with guns, and it couldn't be any more true, except Far Cry 3's story kept me engaged throughout, and the side quests didn't overshadow the overarching narrative. The game takes you on this journey to save your friends while also losing yourself along the way. The violence you take part in throughout the game shapes the main character Jason and asks the question, if you can come back from all the trauma and violence, and actually lets you answer that by giving you a choice how the story ends, where you can either choose to save your friends and leave the island, or you take really the f***ed up kind of route and you go ahead and kill them and then get killed yourself by the leader of the tribe. I always chose to save the friends because, yeah, story-wise, it was always much better that way, and this was a huge moment as no other time during the game were you asked to make a choice like this. This kind of freedom not only with the gameplay, but being able to choose your own ending is what solidified my love for this game, and from there, I was an open-world fiend. I would play all of the new games that would release and have these massive open worlds and loved being able to sink myself into the story, side quests, and collectibles. Things were great, but then something had changed. By the time we had gotten to Far Cry 5 and Assassin's Creed Origins, I was feeling a complete burnout with open world games. Now, I know I had played them consistently for years at this point, but it wasn't just me. Something was different. Every game had started to feel like it was a clone of the last, with minimal changes and without adding anything unique to the experience. Everything was just becoming the same old thing, a giant open world filled with a bunch of things I didn't want to do. The stories had become a lot more shallow, and I didn't find myself caring about the characters I was interacting with, or the world I was in for that matter. It got to the point where I would open the map of whatever game I was playing and I would just groan looking at all the little icons telling me exactly where to go to collect this tiny trinket that didn't do anything except give me an inconsequential amount of XP, and a little pop-up telling me that I had to do this 300 more times. This is where I began to check out of open world games. I was growing up, and I had less and less time to dedicate to gaming. Why would I want to spend my time running around a boring world looking for pointless collectibles that don't add anything to my experience except a migraine? There's no reason I should open a game's map, and instead of being able to explore that map and discover it myself, I'm instead force-fed icons and little markers flooding the screen. It's just noise and it doesn't stop. I stopped playing open world games for a long time and I swore that I was done. I wasn't going to pick up another open world game and would just focus on linear experiences from then on. I had a plan and I was going to stick to it. I heard that The Legend of Zelda was going to be releasing a new open world game called Breath of the Wild, and I had my reservations at first. I heard the news, and my first thought was great, another ocean the depth of a puddle. Can't wait to see yet another boring open world with 1,000 markers on the map telling me exactly where to go and exactly how to play the game. So imagine my surprise when Breath of the Wild launched, and it had none of that. Nintendo looked at the direction open world games were going in and said, okay, but what if it was actually an open world, and actually fun? Gone were the rigid guidelines telling you exactly how to complete a mission or risk failure. Gone were the markers all over the map telling you to go to this exact location or to find this collectible here. It was actually open and free for you to explore and play however you chose. In a landscape of games where it felt like you were being held on to the entire runtime, Nintendo took off the training wheels and let players run wild. You see that mountain in the distance? You can actually go to it. Oh, also you can climb it and there are no invisible barriers stopping you and making you take a certain path. See, that is another example of why it's a true open world as opposed to like the fake open worlds where it's, I see this thing here. Oh man, I want to explore it. Oh, I have this linear path I have to follow and I can only look at this certain thing. There was none of that. So yeah, do you want to explore the Zora domain first? Or would you rather check out Rito Village? That was entirely up to you. It was a breath of fresh air, and I sunk so many hours into the game exploring the world because I wanted to, not because I had an objective marker or some collectible telling me that I had to. Breath of the Wild was a once-in-a-lifetime experience and completely changed open-world gaming forever. It's no surprise that we now see more games taking this hands-off approach and allowing players to explore freely and just choose their own path. Elden Ring was a massive success by following in Breath of the Wild's footsteps and creating a beautiful and massive open world with nothing stopping you. Except for the first enemy you run into when you step out into Elden Ring, I had gotten my shit rocked for like 6 hours trying to do that. That's where Elden Ring shined and where I really had gotten an interest, because with the old games, I didn't want to feel trapped if I was stuck on an enemy or a boss that was too hard for me. So being able to go and explore and find other things to do until I was leveled up enough, it was great. Elden Ring also had the benefit of learning from some of the complaints that Breath of the Wild had received. Enemy variety was great. There were so many dungeons/caves to explore, and weapon durability also wasn't present in this game. Elden Ring brought me back to that same feeling I had with Breath of the Wild, and it felt like the industry was listening to gamers and following Nintendo's approach to a true open world, which they went on to master with Tears of the Kingdom. So with these powerhouses coming out and being wildly successful, you'd think every other franchise would follow, right? Well, not exactly. We've still been getting the same classic Ubisoft copy-paste open worlds with Odyssey and Valhalla, both games which I had on a sale or got as a gift, and played for maybe 30 hours before getting completely fed up and bored out of my mind. There's only so many times you can do the same objective over and over and over again, and there have been a lot of other open world games that have been great and that I haven't really mentioned, like the Batman Arkham games. They had the combat, exploration was really fun, and it was all stuff that was interesting to do. That I appreciated. And it didn't really get stale because every new side quest was with a different villain. The only thing I will give them a knock for are the Riddler trophies. I was able to do it fine with Batman Arkham Asylum. Arkham City was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's quite a lot. And Arkham Knight locking the true ending to the game behind the Riddler trophies just... Another great open world game is Red Dead Redemption 2. The amount of detail that they have in that world and just the level of storytelling that they achieve is something that has to be applauded. Gameplay-wise, it's phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. It has some of the same complaints that I have with other open world games though. I mean, you have to follow a certain mission structure, you have to go here, you have to do this for like the main stories and stuff. But where it truly shined for me is that the story was great. I loved exploring that world, and the level of detail, it kept me coming back for hours and hours. So for me, open worlds have been a pretty mixed bag for the past decade, but those that step out into the spotlight and have something to say have left a major impact on not only the open world genre, but gaming as a whole. Breath of the Wild proved that less is more and let us choose how we explore Hyrule without being bombarded by collectible markers, quest objectives, telling you exactly where to go, and making the first priority be having fun exploring the world, just for the sake of exploring it. The objective should be to make a world that is so interesting and fun to explore on its own without all the unnecessary fluff. How many games do we need with boring side quests that are just there to keep us busy and not actually be engaging? Side quests should enhance what's already there, not be a to-do list and feel like a chore. These games can be better, and they should be better. It's just being cheap and lazy recycling the same game over and over with a different skin. If you play any open world Ubisoft game, you've basically played them all nowadays. I got Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, and while there was a lot of things that I loved about the exploration and being able to be in that world because I'm a huge fan of the Avatar movies, it just left me feeling like I was playing Far Cry 7 with an Avatar skin. I mean, there was some new things that they added to it, and I appreciated it. The new things that they added were probably some of the best parts of the game. One of the most unique things about it was being able to ride your Ikron, and I will give them props on that. At least it made traveling easier and more fun. But then again, I can't give them too much praise because once again, you get hit with invisible walls whenever you travel outside of where the game wants you to be. We don't need another Far Cry or Skyrim reskin. Just trying to rehash the same thing over and over again just becomes stale. People want new experiences, and they want to be able to go into an open world game that actually feels like it's engaging, that they take an active role in, and that you want to be a part of. It's time to make people feel actually immersed and involved in the world as we did when those games first came out. More games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Elden Ring, and Red Dead Redemption. I've heard good things about Ghost of Tsushima. I haven't gotten around to playing it yet, but it is up there on my list of games that I need to get around to. Open worlds have had a problem with laziness for a long time. We don't have to keep going back to what worked 10 years ago and recycling that every single year. All this to say, I love open world games. They have been some of my favorite of all time, and in any list I can think of with my top favorite games, the majority of them are open world games. It's just that we've gotten so many that feel uninspired and lazy. It's a detriment to the genre because it creates burnout with people. The more games that just feel the same and like a copy and paste of each other, the less people are going to be interested in actually keeping up with that genre. I know for me and a lot of other people that it's been a lot of going back to linear games, just because of the fact that I don't want to spend like 80 hours in a world that just doesn't feel like it needs to be an open world game. We have gotten a lot more games in the past few years that have given me a lot more hope for the genre though. We still have a ways to go, and I'm really hopeful that we can get back on track and get back to these great experiences that really just took our breaths away. But I want to know what you think. What first got you into open world games, and which has been your favorite you've played? Let me know down in the comments. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Peace.